My question is about that moment in time when we reach for a higher thought. I've been thinking...
What is a higher thought?
Well, when you say reaching for a better thought.
What is a better thought?
A thought that makes you feel better.
Just wanted to make sure that you know what you're reaching for.
Okay. I've been thinking a lot about that. And I've listened to your teachings for a while now, and you say there's no assertion. And maybe it's my understanding of assertion. And in that moment, it seems it's a very important time for us. And the decision that we make then seems to be an act of will to actually reach for something that's higher. And I think we have a misunderstanding about what actually willpower is. I actually came to the realization that I think willpower is really allowing, and that it's not some sort of assertion.
Willpower is choosing. Willpower is choosing a place of allowing. It's choosing a thought that allows.
Okay.
So you could say willpower is guiding thought.
Right.
Or choosing thought.
Okay. When I first started doing this work, I think work's the wrong word, but when I first started allowing these experiences, I noticed that initially doing that sort of choosing seemed to be hard. And I wondered what that was about. As
you've been moving through your life, you've developed habits of thought, and they have vibrational frequencies. And as you choose them, you have a feeling response to them that is your emotional guidance system, but you've come to refer to that as your mood or attitude. So your mood or attitude is your indicator of the balance of thoughts that you usually run through in a day. So when you're focused upon something, your thought is offering a vibration that really only gives you, by law of attraction, access to other thoughts that are vibrationally quite near it. So your range of vibration is not the gamut all the way from truly disconnected to connected. It's rather a narrow range. So if you're in a sort of unpleasant mood, your range of vibration goes from feeling really frightened to feeling pretty rotten. In other words, that's not a very big range, but it doesn't go from agony to ecstasy. It's like the range on your radio dial or on your CB radio. It's the range that is the range.
Right.
And so, as you stand here in this place where you're really focusing upon something in this moment that causes you to really feel strong negative emotion, and you say, oh, my guidance system is working, I'm feeling negative emotion, even in that awareness you have diffused the vibration a little bit.
Absolutely.
And as you go further by saying, and I really don't choose to feel this way, it seems that I do feel this way, but I would like to choose a different thought, you've diffused the vibration a little bit more, but you still don't have access to that bright, happy, fluffy thought way over there. In other words, you've changed your range a little bit by your decision to feel better, but you don't have access to all of those thoughts. So as you say, well, I'm going to reach for a better feeling thought, and your desire is to really find a blissful thought, the most pleasant thing that you've ever thought, it's unlikely that you're going to come across it very easily, even if you've been carrying it around in your pocket for a while. In other words, Esther began making mental notes and eventually written notes. We encouraged her to write a notebook full of extraordinary experiences. She had pages of experiences where she remembered feeling exaltation in the middle of them. And she thought, well, she would use those as her touchstone in order to feel better in times when she did not feel so good. But the funny thing about that is, you can't even remember those times when you're in the middle of something else, not because you're bad, but because vibrationally you don't have access to it. Mm-hmm. So that's why we say, as you just reach for the best feeling thought you can find and hold it for as little as 17 seconds, then that better feeling thought becomes your mid-range thought, and then the horrible thought goes out of range and a little bit better feeling thought comes into range. And as you reach for that thought and hold it, and that thought and hold it, and that thought and hold it, before you know it, really within an hour or two, you can be in a whole different vibration.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to get at is, what is that power that decides to reach for the feeling thought? What is that?
Focus. It's the selfish desire, and we mean selfish in the most
angelic of words. But that seems to be like some sort of assertion, though.
No, it is your selfish desire to feel good. Okay. It's your guidance system surfacing. It's contrast working for you, because whenever you know what you don't want, you know more clearly what you do want. So when you're confused, you want clarity. When you're sick, you want wellness. When there isn't enough of something, you want more of it. In other words, it's this balance of the universe that causes the preference to be focused within you.
But that to me seems to be the critical aspect of your teachings, is that in that moment you have that choice. I mean, it seems so critical to me.
Give us more.
Well, like that gentleman just now, he talked about he was living in this basement, and then he came and listened to you, and he suddenly changed something.
But the thing that we want you to understand is that within all of your vibrations, there are a bunch of things happening. You're believing some stuff, and you're desiring some stuff, and all of that stuff is called thought, and all of that thought is part of the mix. So all of you have this vibration that is happening that is desiring belief, and desiring belief. So as he was struggling within his life experience, he was shooting out rockets of desire. That's why we call them rockets. They're brief insights that say, I want something different than I'm now living. Right. But they are so brief because your usual vibration is in a different place. But once you launch the rocket, the asking has taken place and the source energy begins to answer. So what happened to him as he came to the gathering, and as he sat here for hours like you are all doing today, is that little by little we sort of soothed him into his connection. He became more connected, more believing in his own well-being, right, more trusting in well-being, more accepting the perfection of who he was, just for a little bit. And it was enough to make the difference that he allowed just a little more. And he was wise enough that he made the connection between what he wanted, how he felt, how he now felt, and what he allowed. And that's what we're talking about more today than anything. Mm-hmm. As we give endless stories about Jerry and Esther and the way life unfolds for them, the reason that we are offering the majority of the stories is because we want you to realize that it is in their recognizing of what is happening that the true allowing takes place. If you want something and you've forgotten that you've been asking for it, it's been so long since you articulated it, you've sort of given up on it, and then the universe begins to say, come this way, come this way, come this way. And even though sometimes you are following your bliss and going that way, you don't know why you're going that way. You're missing all of the delicious signposts along the way that are evidence of the success that is coming to you. But when you have just that morning talked about what you want and why you want it, and then the universe says, come this way, and you get the impulse, and you follow it, and you receive a little breakthrough, you can feel, I'm onto something, I'm sniffing it out, I can feel it happening. And that's when deliberate creation really becomes satisfying. Right. That's the way you intended for it to be.
So many, teachers, when they talk about this, other teachers, they talk about, this moment when suddenly everything dropped. I remember you talking about Jerry. He just said, okay, I'm letting go. And it seems to be that is the crux of being human. It's just like this allowing the allowing. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like everyone that ever had a peak experience or just, it was all about just opening up to that moment that was already there anyway.
So sometimes out of exhaustion, you just torture yourself into allowing. That's one way to go.
That's certainly one way. It wouldn't be the way I choose. But
sometimes through stimulation of someone who is so connected and you're sort of trapped in your chair, right, and it's embarrassing to get up and leave. Right. And so you just sit and you listen to the rampage that goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Sometimes you can find a greater place of allowing. Right. Most of you have to die to get it. In other words, we didn't want to upset you. When you make that transition, when you release that consciousness, you always reemerge back into that pure, powerful energy. Right. But what we're all talking about and what you're talking about is, how do I vibrate in a way that allows it here? And we say, you just got to practice. But the motivation that must be there before you're even willing to do the practice is, you have to be selfishly oriented. You have to be so selfishly oriented that you really want to feel good. Have you ever been with someone and as you start a conversation, you can just see by the look on their face that they don't want to go there. They're hoping you don't go there. Sometimes they're bold enough to say, please don't go there. Those are powerful teachers, because what they're saying to you is, I've been there before, I didn't like it when I was there, let's not activate this and ruin this moment. So if we were standing in your physical shoes, that's the way we would approach this. We would begin to discover that just like there's food that pleases me and food that doesn't, and there's water temperature that pleases me and water temperature that doesn't, there are thoughts that please me more and thoughts that please me less. But it is not until you realize that you have control within this environment that you are willing to be the chooser. And that's why, as we began expressing through Esther, we called this the science of deliberate creation, because we wanted you to begin to recognize that you have the power to choose. And then later, as we watched you working so hard in your choices, we began saying, well, don't choose quite so hard and just chill out and relax a little bit. And now you're helping us to integrate the two all over again, aren't you? Creation is about focusing. And so why would did you come into these bodies to begin with? In other words, source energy is in a very blissful place. Source energy is that heavenly place that you're all going to eventually croak and reemerge back to. So what's the point of physical experience? If it's perfect in the non-physical, you come forth in the physical and you suffer for a while and you create some stuff and then you reemerge back into the perfect place. In other words, what's the point? Why not just stay in non-physical where there's no resistance, where it feels perfect all the time? And we say the reason that you come forth is because there is so much excitement and so much stimulation in getting to mold the energy. Have you ever sat? Try it sometime. It will teach you everything you need to know about creation. Get some really bright, gooey, colorful clay. Lots of different colors. And put them in clumps on a table. And invite 4 or 5 or 10 children in. And then have them all sit over there while you play with the clay. And say to them, I don't want you to play. I want you to watch me play. I am the creator of this stuff. You just sit over there. And they will be antsy. They would gather together in force and tie you up if they could, because they are wanting so much they cannot wait to get their hands in the clay. And that's the way you felt as you came forth into these physical experiences. You didn't say, oh, I'll go forth into a perfect environment. You said, I like this contrast that's going to cause me to focus. And you understood that the way you create is through the focusing, through the choosing. So it's through the choosing and feeling and choosing and feeling and choosing and feeling and choosing and feeling and choosing and feeling. And as we watch Esther, we will see her choose a thought, sometimes not because it's the best feeling thought, but she will choose a thought because it's the most stimulating thought, or the most interesting thought, or the most compelling thought, because it's out there, it's been being shown, and somebody else has ratcheted it up. It's a big, juicy thought. It's not boring in any way. It's a fantastically big, juicy thought. So she will join the thought because she is mixed up in her criteria. She's looking for truthful, or interesting, or expansive, and forgetting the only thing that really matters: how does it feel? And so sometimes she'll be right in the middle of it with both feet and both hands, sort of chewing it up, enjoying how fast her mind is, enjoying the thoughts that come, enjoying the conclusions that come. And sometimes she, like you, will be pretty deep into the thought before she realizes, ooh, this thought does not feel very good. While it has been stimulating and interesting, I am not allowing life force to flow. I have chosen a thought that is so apart from the source that is really me that I'm withering away from my source. And then if she's withered too far, it's hard to find the thought that feels better. So that's the key, to be so aware of the way you feel that you are choosing your thoughts with one criteria and one criteria only. How does it feel? Because every thought, this is so good. Every thought has the potential of being that juicy, big, satisfying thought. Because law of attraction says everything that you focus upon must become more. So that's why all genius is attention to a subject. That's all it is. Law of attraction makes the genius. It is you holding the focus that law of attraction works upon, you see. So, is creating about choosing? Yes, it is. Is creating about thinking? Yes, it is. Is creating about thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling? Oh, that's the way we'd create. And so if we choose a little thought and we can't tell how it feels, it's so little. It's a puny little thought. And it's not about anything I've ever thought about before, so I don't have an opinion one way or another. So I'm thinking about that thought and I don't have no knee-jerk response, no gut feeling, nothing. It's just a thought. But I'll talk about it anyway because it's polite. And the people that I'm having dinner with want to talk about it, so we'll talk about it further. We'll talk about it further. We'll talk about it further. Before you know, it starts to pick up momentum. And then other people bring more into it, and other people bring more into it. Now I'm beginning to have a feeling response. I'm interested, I'm excited, I'm uplifted, or I'm not liking it, I'm discouraged. You can tell whether you are troubled by the thought as it amasses more energy, or whether it is life-giving. And that's why we say, as you begin to say, how does this thought feel? That's why the music called you. The music called you initially because it felt so very good. It was the tool through which you connected to source energy first, but not only first, but most. In other words, because it was the subject that you gave more attention to longer, you held yourself in a place of connection longer than any other subject, or maybe all other subjects put together in your life. And then when the music becomes a business, in other words, when the music becomes more than just the music, and there are those other things to focus upon, upon, then some of those don't feel so good. In other words, in retrospect, you can see how it gave you life and how it took life from you. Yes.